The oldest species in the galaxy encountered humans and called us family. For 3 billion years, the oldest species in the galaxy watched civilizations rise and fall. They tested the strongest empires. They judged the wisest minds. They waited through the rise of 400 spacefaring civilizations and rejected every single one. The warriors failed. The ancients failed. The immortals failed. Then humanity arrived. A species barely 300 years into the stars. Violent. Flawed. Still haunted by its past. And instead of turning away, the oldest beings in existence did something unthinkable. They answered. They opened a sanctuary that had remained sealed since before Earth existed. And for the first time in galactic history, the first one spoke to someone not as subjects, not as rivals, but as kin. Welcome home, they said. Our children. For 300 years, humanity had chased the stars. They had spread across 17 star systems, built cities on moons that never saw sunlight, and learned how to survive in places that actively tried to kill them. Compared to the ancient powers of the galaxy, humans were still children, loud, reckless, and far too curious for their own good. The Galactic Concord tolerated them. That alone was considered an achievement. Most species in the Concord had been traveling between stars for tens of thousands, even millions of years. Some had outlived entire geological ages. Humans, by comparison, had barely learned where not to touch the machinery. And yet, here they were. The UEES Perseverance drifted silently at the edge of the Keth-7 system, its hull reflecting the dull red glow of a dead star. Captain Era Okonkwo stood on the bridge with her hands clasped behind her back, eyes fixed on the view screen. The star before them had burned out long before Earth had developed multicellular life. No planets orbited it anymore, only cold rock, drifting dust, and the quiet remains of something that had once mattered. This system is pointless, Advisor Talon said from behind her. The alien diplomat's 6 limbs folded inward, a posture Era had learned meant unease. Talon was Chu, one of the oldest species in the Concord. His people had explored the galaxy for over 2 million years. Keth-7 contains no life, no resources, and no strategic value, Talon continued. There is nothing here worth risking a human vessel. Era didn't turn around. The Concord requested a full survey, she replied calmly. We survey. The Concord requests many things, Talon said carefully. Not all of them require obedience. Era smiled faintly. You think we're wasting our time? I think, Talon said, choosing his words with ancient caution, that humans have a strange habit of looking for meaning in empty places. Before Era could answer, a voice cut in from the communications console. Captain? Lieutenant Park didn't sound excited. She sounded confused. Yes, Lieutenant? I'm picking up something wrong. Era turned. Define wrong. Park's fingers moved quickly over the console. Her expression shifted from confusion to disbelief, and then to something close to fear. It's a signal, she said slowly. But it shouldn't exist. The bridge grew quiet. What do you mean? Era asked. The frequency, Park continued. The encoding. The carrier wave. It matches a profile that hasn't been active in recorded galactic history. Talon froze. Say it, Era said. Park swallowed. It's Verity. Silence slammed into the bridge like a physical force. Even Talon stopped moving. Everyone knew the name. The Verity were not a myth, but they might as well have been. They were the first spacefaring species in the galaxy. Older than any empire. Older than most stars. They had built automated stations that still drifted at the edges of known space, machines so ancient they predated entire evolutionary trees. And yet, despite 3 billion years of existence, the Verity had never spoken. Not once. Every species had tried to contact them. Every species had failed. The Verenti do not respond, Talon whispered. His skin had faded to a pale gray, a clear sign of fear. In 2 million years, my people sent thousands of messages. We received nothing. Only silence. Era stared at the pulsing signal on the screen. Well, she said quietly, they're responding now. The signal wasn't random. It pulsed with a steady rhythm, slow and deliberate, almost like a heartbeat. It's coming from inside the star, Park said. Captain, there's something there. What kind of something? Era asked. Park hesitated. A structure. Massive. Bigger than any station I've ever seen. Talon stepped forward sharply. Captain, this must be reported immediately. We cannot approach a Verenti construct without Concord authorization. This violates every protocol ever written. Era met his gaze. Your people waited 2 million years for them to answer, she said. Mine waited 300. She turned back to the helm. Take us in. This is recklessness, Talon said. This is exactly why older species consider humans dangerous. Era smiled, but there was steel in it. Maybe, she said. Or maybe this is why they answered us. The Perseverance moved forward. As they crossed the boundary of the dead star's corona, sensors screamed warnings that made no sense. Energy readings spiked, then stabilized. The darkness ahead of them shifted. And then the structure appeared. It unfolded slowly, like a flower opening after an endless night. Petals of dark metal spread outward from a glowing core of soft gold light, revealing an opening large enough to swallow cities. It hung inside the dead star as if it belonged there, as if it had always been waiting. Their opening, Park whispered. Era felt a chill run down her spine. For 3 billion years, Talon said softly, this door never opened. The light intensified. And from somewhere deep within the ancient structure, a voice, not through speakers, not through signals, spoke directly into their minds. After so long. You have finally come home. No one on the bridge spoke. The words still echoed inside their minds, not a sound, but a certainty. Welcome home. Captain Era Okonkwo forced herself to breathe. Training kept her hand steady, but her pulse thundered in her ears. She had commanded ships through pirate ambushes, solar storms, and first contact disasters, but nothing had prepared her for a voice that bypassed every system and spoke directly to the soul. Lieutenant Park, Era said quietly. Confirm source. Park's hands trembled slightly as she worked. The signal isn't broadcasting anymore, Captain. It's waiting. Like it already knows we're here. That's not comforting, someone muttered. Talon stood rigid, all 6 of his limbs locked in place. His species had legends about the Verenti, whispers passed down over millions of years. Not gods. Not demons. Something older. This structure predates the Concord, Talon said slowly. Predates written history. Predates most stars in this sector. The flower-like construct continued to unfold. Each metallic petal moved with impossible grace, revealing inner layers of glowing geometry and shifting light. There were no seams. No visible engines. No weapons. Only invitation. They're not targeting us, the tactical officer reported. No energy buildup. No defensive posture. Era swallowed. Are they guiding us? Yes, Captain, Park said. There's a corridor of stabilized space forming ahead. Like a path. Talon turned to Era sharply. Captain, I must insist, we withdraw and notify the Concord. This moment belongs to the entire galaxy, not one human ship. Era met his gaze. And if they close the door? Talon hesitated. If this is the only chance, Era continued, then history will remember who stepped forward and who turned away. She turned back to the helm. Proceed. The UEES Perseverance slid into the golden light. Sensors went blind instantly. External cameras failed, then returned showing impossible readings, angles that didn't align, distances that contradicted themselves. Space folded in on itself like a thought unfinished. The ship wasn't moving. And yet, it was arriving. When the light faded, the bridge display stabilized. They were inside. Vast corridors stretched away in every direction, glowing with soft illumination that had no visible source. The walls were not metal, nor crystal, but something in between, smooth, alive, faintly warm to the touch. "This place is still active," the science officer whispered. "After 3 billion years, it's still running." Era felt a strange sensation, not fear, but recognition. Like walking into a childhood home she'd never been to. Then the voice returned. Not loud. Not commanding. Tired. "We wondered if you would come," it said. "Many have stood where you stand now." Images filled their minds. Alien vessels. Ancient hull designs. Species Era had only seen in history archives, and some she didn't recognize at all. They asked for power. They asked for knowledge. They asked for immortality. The images faded. None asked to listen. Talon collapsed to his knees. "My people," he whispered. "We begged you to speak to us." "You spoke," the voice replied gently. "But you never heard." The Perseverance settled onto a platform that rose smoothly to meet it. There was no impact. No vibration. Just stillness. A door formed in the air beside the ship, an opening shaped for beings of many forms. "They want us to leave the ship," Park said. "They want us vulnerable," Talon said, fear sharp in his tone. Era nodded. "Which means they don't intend to kill us." That didn't comfort anyone. Era stood. Away team. 30 personnel. No weapons. Talon stared at her. "Captain." "This isn't a battlefield," Era said softly. "This is an invitation." The ship's doors opened. Warm air flowed in, carrying the scent of growing things and ancient stone. Not sterile. Not artificial. Alive. The crew stepped out together. The corridor stretched infinitely ahead, its walls shifting with moving images, stars forming, galaxies colliding, species rising and fading like breaths held too long. "This is memory," the voice said. "The place where we keep what we were." They entered a vast chamber. Clouds drifted near the ceiling. At its center stood a figure made of light, shifting, unstable, composed of countless forms layered atop one another. "I am the archivist," it said. "What remains of the Verity?" Era stepped forward. "Why us?" The archivist regarded her. "Because you carry something we thought was lost." "What?" Era asked. The figure's light softened. "Grief." The chamber filled with images. Human monuments. Names carved into stone. Museums of vanished cultures. Languages preserved long after their speakers were gone. "You remember what was lost," the archivist said. "And you refuse to let it disappear." Talon trembled. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Memory fades. All species forget." "Yes," the archivist replied. "And you hate that." The light dimmed slightly. "You fight forgetting." The chamber darkened. "You have passed the first threshold," the archivist said. "But memory alone is not enough." Era felt the air grow heavy. "Now we must see if you can endure it." The walls began to close in, not physically, but mentally. One by one, the crew felt themselves pulled apart. Separated. Alone. "What comes next is not punishment," the voice echoed. "It is love." The light vanished. And the second test began. Era Okonkwo stood alone. There was no darkness, only distance. A vast, endless space stretched in every direction, filled with floating images that shimmered like reflections on deep water. She could feel the presence of the structure around her, but it no longer felt like a place. It felt like a mind. Do not be afraid, the archivist's voice said gently. You are not imprisoned. You are being remembered. Era steadied herself. You said this was a test. Yes. What are you testing? The space around her shifted. Images formed, worlds she did not recognize. Alien cities gleaming beneath unfamiliar stars. Species rising, expanding, mastering their environments. She felt time accelerate. Centuries passed in heartbeats. We asked every species the same question, the archivist said. In 1,000 forms. Across 1 billion years. The first image froze. A towering, armored species stood before a Verity station. Their representative spoke proudly, projecting holograms of conquest and expansion. They remembered their victories, the archivist said. They forgot the cost. The image shattered. Another formed. A vast collective consciousness, billions of minds speaking as one. They shared memories freely, seamlessly, perfectly. They remembered everything, the archivist continued. And felt nothing. Era felt a chill. A third image appeared. A species ancient beyond reckoning, their histories carved into monuments older than mountains. They spoke of destiny, of being chosen, of their right to rule. They remembered themselves, the archivist said softly. And no one else. The images faded. Is that why they failed? Era asked. Because they remembered the wrong things? No, the archivist replied. They failed because they chose what to forget. The space around Era brightened. Now the images were human. Primitive fires beneath alien skies. Early colonies struggling to survive. Names carved into metal walls. Memorials erected not to triumph, but to loss. When we looked into your species, the archivist said, we were confused. Era frowned. Confused how? You remember your failures. Images surged. Ruined cities. Lost colonies. Historical footage of wars humanity wished it could undo. Children learning about atrocities committed by their own ancestors. You teach your young what you did wrong, the archivist said. You preserve the names of those you hurt. Era felt her throat tighten. Because forgetting them would be worse, she whispered. The archivist paused. Yes, it said. That answer took many of your species' lifetimes to learn. The images changed again. Museums dedicated to extinct alien cultures, species humanity had never met, preserved purely because someone thought their absence mattered. You mourn strangers, the archivist said. You grieve animals, cultures, languages that vanished before you were born. Era felt tears forming. Someone should, she said. If no one remembers them, it's like they never existed. The space trembled, not violently, but with emotion. That, the archivist said, is the burden of memory. The scene shifted abruptly. Now Era saw Talon. He stood before a Verity presence, speaking with confidence, reciting centuries of true achievements. Behind him, unmentioned, lay ruined worlds. He remembers pride, the archivist said. But pride cannot carry the dead. The image dissolved. Era saw Lieutenant Park. She stood in a field hospital, distributing medicine that would not save everyone. She wrote names she would never forget. She apologizes to the dying, the archivist said. Even when she is not at fault. Another image. Engineer Chen, standing over a reactor control, knowing the cost of survival. You do not call this heroism, the archivist said. You call it tragedy. Era's voice shook. Because it is. Yes. The images vanished. The space darkened slightly. Memory is not data, the archivist said. It is weight. Era felt it then, not physically, but emotionally. The accumulated sorrow of billions of lives remembered not because they were great, but because they were lost. Every species we tested sought relief, the archivist continued. They wanted memory without pain. Era shook her head. That's not how memory works. Exactly. The space brightened again. You understand something fundamental, the archivist said. To remember is to suffer. Era took a deep breath. And to forget is to let the suffering mean nothing. The archivist was silent for a long moment. You have passed the first test, it finally said. Relief washed over Era, but it was brief. The space around her began to collapse inward. Memory alone is not enough, the archivist continued. Many species remember. The images twisted, now showing lives under impossible choices. Systems failing. Resources scarce. Survival demanding sacrifice. The second test is endurance. Era felt the air grow heavy. What does that mean? She asked. It means we will show you the full weight of existence, the archivist said. Not as history. Not as story. The space fractured. But as experience. Era felt herself being pulled downward, away from the images, away from the voice. We must see what you become when remembering hurts too much. The last thing she heard before the world shattered was the archivist's voice, no longer distant, no longer neutral, only solemn. Do you carry the weight? Or does it crush you? The world went dark. And the second test began. Captain Era Okonkwo opened her eyes and tasted dust. Red dust. She knew this place. Mars. Not the thriving world of her own time, but Mars as it had been during the collapse, 2 centuries earlier, when humanity had learned that survival was not fair. Warning sirens screamed through cracked domes. Emergency lights flickered. People ran past her, shouting, crying, begging. In front of her stood the oxygen distribution console. Era's heart stopped. No, she whispered. No, this already happened. A young administrator rushed toward her, face pale with terror. Commander! We're out of time. Sector 7's life support is failing. If we reroute oxygen from Sector 3, everyone there dies. If we don't, Sector 7 dies. Era stared at the console. She knew this moment. History recorded it. Commander Sarah Chen had stood here. She had chosen to save 4,000 by sacrificing 3,000. She had never forgiven herself. I can't, Era said hoarsely. I shouldn't be here. The administrator grabbed her arm. They're suffocating right now. Choose. Era felt the weight crash down on her chest, the terrible arithmetic of survival. There was no good choice. Only fewer graves. Her hands trembled as she reached for the console. I'm sorry, she whispered, to the living, to the dying, to the dead who would follow. She made the choice. The screams echoed long after the system stabilized. The world shattered. Chief Engineer David Chen stood in the heart of Europa Station. Alarms blared. The shields were failing. Outside the viewport, enemy ships closed in like vultures. He knew this place too. The siege of Europa. 800 souls trapped aboard a station that could not be saved. An officer beside him slumped against the wall, bleeding. You know what to do, she said softly. Chen's hands hovered over the reactor controls. If we overload it, he said, voice shaking, the blast will destroy the fleet. And the station, the officer finished. We knew this was possible. Chen looked around. Scientists. Engineers. Civilians. People who had accepted death so that others might live. There has to be another way. There isn't, she said. The math doesn't change just because it hurts. Chen thought of his grandmother, who had survived the first Mars War. Courage isn't being fearless, she had told him. It's being afraid and doing what must be done anyway. He closed his eyes. I'm sorry, he said, to everyone. He pressed the button. Light swallowed everything. Lieutenant Park knelt on the floor of a hospital ward during the Great Plague. Children lay on beds around her, breathing shallowly. Medicine crates stood open, nearly empty. A doctor handed her a list. These children have the highest chance of survival. The rest. He didn't finish the sentence. Park moved from bed to bed, administering doses, her hand steady, her heart breaking. A small girl looked up at her. "Am I getting better?" Park swallowed hard and smiled. "You're very brave." When the medicine ran out, the screaming began. Park stayed until the end. She apologized to each child she could not save. When it was over, she sat alone in the dark and wondered if she would ever feel clean again. She did not look away. She did not forget their faces. Advisor Talon stood beneath a sky he had never seen before. Crystal cities gleamed in the sunlight. Towers of light and glass reflected music that flowed like water. The Marathi, a species erased from true history. Talon watched his ancestors arrive in warships. Watched them declare the world strategically necessary. Watched them burn the cities. He heard screams that his people's records never mentioned. He watched an entire civilization die, not because they were dangerous, but because they were in the way. Talon fell to his knees. "We never told this story," he whispered. "We never remembered you." The weight crushed him. And for the first time in his long life, he did not turn away. One by one, the crew of the Perseverance endured their trials. They were not tested with pain for pain's sake. They were tested with responsibility. With loss. With the knowledge that sometimes survival demands sacrifices that scar the soul. Some screamed. Some begged for it to stop. Some collapsed to their knees under the weight of remembered suffering. But none of them chose indifference. None of them decided that caring was too expensive. None of them said this doesn't matter. When Era's trial ended, she stood once more in the chamber of light, shaking but unbroken. Her crew appeared around her, exhausted, changed, alive. Talon looked smaller somehow. Humbled. Park was crying quietly. Chin stared at his hands, as if they still carried ghosts. The archivist stood before them, its form steady now, solemn. "Why?" Era demanded, voice raw. "Why would you do this to us?" The archivist's light softened. "Every species we tested eventually broke," it said. "Not physically. Spiritually." Images appeared. Warrior species who emerged from their trials believing compassion was weakness. Hive minds who erased the memories entirely. Ancient empires who decided suffering justified cruelty. They learned the wrong lesson, the archivist said. They chose comfort over conscience. It turned back to the humans. But you. The light pulsed gently. You carried the weight. Chin spoke quietly. Because someone had to. Yes, the archivist replied. That is endurance. Era wiped her eyes and straightened. Is it over? The archivist paused. One test remains, it said. But this one is not pain. The chamber brightened. There is someone who has waited a very long time to meet you. Somewhere deep within the remembrance, something ancient stirred. And for the first time since entering the Veranti sanctuary, the humans felt not dread, but invitation. The heart of the remembrance was not a machine. It was a garden. Era Okonkwo slowed her steps as the chamber opened before them. After endless corridors of light and memory, she had expected something vast and mechanical, another impossible hall, another construct beyond comprehension. Instead, there was soil beneath her boots. Dark, rich soil. Trees rose gently around them, their leaves glowing faintly with colors that shifted when viewed from different angles. A narrow stream flowed through the center of the garden, water moving over smooth stones that hummed softly, like distant music. The air was warm. Alive. This, Lieutenant Park whispered. This feels like Earth. The archivist appeared beside them, its form less abstract now, calmer. This place was shaped from memory, it said. From longing. At the center of the garden, beside the stream, something stirred. Light gathered. Not harsh, not blinding, but warm, like sunlight through autumn leaves. The being that emerged did not hold a single shape. Sometimes it looked almost humanoid, sometimes like a constellation given form, sometimes like a cloud of living gold. Its presence pressed gently against their minds, not with power, but with age. So small, the being said aloud, its voice resonating in the air itself. So young, and so bright. Era felt her throat tighten. The archivist bowed. Caliph, who remembers the first light, it said softly. The last of the Verenti. Calitha's light brightened slightly as it regarded the humans. I have waited, Caliph said. For so very long. Era stepped forward, her crew instinctively remaining behind her. You're alone, she said quietly. Yes, Caliph replied without bitterness. The others rested long ago. One by one, they returned their light to the universe. I stayed. Why? Engineer Chen asked. Calitha's form shifted, and for a moment Era saw something like a face, gentle, tired, kind. Because someone had to remember, Caliph said. And because I hoped someone would come. Park swallowed. You tested everyone. Yes. Why us? Era asked. Why humanity? Caliph raised a hand of light, and the garden froze. Images bloomed in the air, Verenti history, stretching back billions of years. We were not always what you see now, Caliph said. Once, we were like you. We fought wars. We made terrible choices. We destroyed species and justified it as necessity. The images were painful. Entire worlds burning. Lives erased. But we changed, Caliph continued. Not because we were wise, but because we learned to feel guilt. Talon stiffened. Guilt, Caliph said gently, was our first teacher. It taught us that survival alone was not enough. That to exist, we had to be worthy of existence. The images shifted. Other species appeared, the Dreamery, the Chu, the collective of Ain. They remembered power, Caliph said. Or pride. Or nothing at all. The images turned to humanity. Museums. Memorials. Names carved into stone. Stories of failure taught to children. And then there was you, Caliph said, wonder in its voice. You remember your dead. You remember your enemies. You remember the things you wish had never happened. Era felt tears slide down her face. We hate forgetting, she hooked. Yes, Caliph replied softly. That is why you are ready. Chen frowned. Ready for what? Caliph moved closer. The warmth of its light wrapped around them like an embrace. For inheritance. The word hung heavy in the air. We are dying, Caliph said. Not suddenly. Not painfully. But inevitably. The remembrance cannot exist without a living mind to care for it forever. Park's voice trembled. You want us to take it? Yes, Caliph said. Not as rulers. Not as gods. But as family. Era's breath caught. Family, she whispered. Calitha's light pulsed warmly. You are not merely our successors, it said. The seeds of life we scattered carried pieces of ourselves. Memory. Empathy. The capacity to grieve. A realization struck Era like a wave. We're your children. Yes, Caliph said simply. Silence fell. Then Era shook her head. We'll get it wrong. Caliph smiled. I know, it said. You will argue about us. Rewrite us. Forget details. Make us less noble than we were, and sometimes more. Chen let out a quiet breath. We'll make bad art about you. I hope so, Caliph said warmly. I want to be real. The garden brightened. I offer you the memories of the Verenti, Caliph said. 3 billion years of love, loss, art, science, and regret. Not as a burden, but as a gift. Era turned to her crew. They were exhausted. Changed. Afraid. But still standing. She faced Caliph again. We accept, she said. Light exploded outward, gentle, endless, filled with stories. Not overwhelming, but waiting. Accessible. Alive. When the light faded, Caliph was dimmer now. Smaller. Tired. One last truth, Caliph whispered. I stayed because I was lonely. Era stepped forward and did something no one had done in 3 billion years. She reached out. Her hand passed through warm light. We'll remember you, she said. As you were. Not perfect. Not divine. Just you. Calitha's light flickered with joy. Then I can rest. The garden glowed softly as Caliph closed their eyes. For the first time since the galaxy was young, the last of the first ones let go. The galaxy did not notice the moment the Verity ended. There was no supernova. No gravitational scream. No divine signal echoing across the stars. A single light dimmed. And the universe continued breathing. Inside the remembrance, the garden slowly settled. The stream flowed on. The trees shimmered gently, as if bowing in farewell. Era Okonkwo stood where Caliph had faded, her hand still raised, as though the warmth might return if she waited long enough. It didn't. Talon knelt beside her, his long lifespan suddenly feeling very short. My people searched for them for 2 million years, he said quietly. We wanted wisdom. Power. Answers. Era lowered her hand. They wanted family. The archivist appeared one final time, its form simpler now, less light, more presence. The remembrance is yours, it said. Not as masters. As caretakers. What happens now? Lieutenant Park asked. The archivist gestured, and the walls of the chamber dissolved into a vision of the galaxy. Worlds spinning. Civilizations rising. Others flickering uncertainly. You will decide what is remembered, the archivist said. And what is taught? Chen frowned. That's terrifying. Yes, the archivist replied. That is why you were chosen. The UEE's Perseverance returned to known space 3 days later. The Concorde erupted. Emergency councils convened. Ancient species demanded explanations. Data archives strained under the weight of what humanity now carried. When Era presented the truth that the Verity were gone, and that humanity had been named their inheritors, the chamber fell into chaos. This is unacceptable, cried a crystalline delegate. A juvenile species cannot be trusted with such a legacy. Era did not raise her voice. We didn't ask for this, she said. But we will not abandon it. Talon stood beside her. My people waited longer than most, he said. And we were not chosen. He bowed to humanity. If the first ones trusted them, Talon continued, then so will I. The room fell silent. Humanity did not claim dominion. They built libraries of remembrance, vast stations placed at the edges of space, where any species could contribute their histories, their mistakes, their dead. They taught children not only how wars were won, but how they should never have been fought. They preserved extinct cultures without judgment. Not heroes. Not villains. Just lives. When conflict came, and it always did, humanity did not claim moral superiority. They claimed responsibility. Centuries passed. Humanity changed. They grew stronger. Smarter. Stranger. But they never erased the old names. When a species went extinct, humans mourned them as if they had been neighbors. When a civilization chose cruelty, humans remembered the cost, because they had lived it, remembered it, inherited it. Far in the future, at the heat-death edge of the universe, a single human remained. Old beyond measure. Modified beyond recognition. Kept alive not by fear of death, but by duty. They stood alone in the final library. Around them floated the sum of galactic memory. Every love. Every mistake. Every hope that had burned briefly and beautifully against the dark. The archivist, long diminished, almost a whisper now, spoke one last time. "Why do you stay?" it asked. The human smiled, weary and kind. "Because someone has to remember," they said. The stars outside dimmed, one by one. The last galaxies faded. Darkness crept in, not as an enemy, but as an ending. As the universe exhaled its final breath, the human reached out and activated the final archive. Every memory, human and alien alike, was released. Not into machines, but into the fabric of existence itself. So that even when nothing remained, the universe would remember that it had once been full of life. The archivist's voice faded completely. And in the infinite dark that followed, there was one final truth. When the universe died, it did not die alone. Because humanity was there at the end. Still remembering. Still mourning. Still loving. Still family.